It was early April of 2023, and the air in the hills outside Flagstaff, Arizona still carried a bit of winter's bite during the early mornings. I'd gotten into a strict running routine to clear my head before work. Same path, same time, every day. My favorite route was a 5-mile loop through a lightly wooded area just north of town. It was quiet, peaceful, and rarely crowded. Exactly what I needed. That morning felt no different. I left my apartment a little before 6 a.m., earbuds in, playlist on, and jogged through the neighborhood before crossing into the trailhead at the edge of the woods. The dirt path crunched beneath my sneakers, and mist clung to the trees like a sleeping ghost. I wasn't worried. I knew that trail like the back of my hand, or at least I thought I did. About 2 miles in, I reached the mile marker I always used as a mental checkpoint, a wooden post sticking out of the ground with a weathered 2 carved into it. But today, there was something new. Someone had scratched something just below the number. I slowed down to look. The words were messy, shallow, like they'd been etched with something dull. Don't stop running. It immediately struck me as weird. I took out one earbud and listened. The woods were silent. Even the birds weren't singing. I looked around and didn't see anyone. No other runners, no parked cars at the entrance when I passed it. It made my skin crawl a little, but I tried to shake it off. Probably some high school kids playing a prank. Still, I kept my music off as I continued down the trail. Another half-mile in, I noticed something even stranger. I passed another mile marker, also labeled 2. I stopped, confused, thinking maybe I missed something, but the path hadn't split. I'd been coming here every day for months. There was no loop between 2 identical markers. This one was freshly painted, clean, newer. Beneath the number was another carved phrase, deeper this time, more deliberate. He waits at 3. A chill rippled down my spine. I turned around, heart starting to race faster than my stride. The forest around me felt different, darker somehow, even though the sun was rising. I picked up my pace, now genuinely spooked. I tried to rationalize it, but nothing about it made sense. As I jogged, I passed another marker. This one had no number, just a single word carved into the side run. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I sprinted now, the trail unfamiliar under my feet despite walking and running it for months. The trees looked wrong, taller than they should have been, leaning in as though trying to block out the growing daylight. Then I heard something behind me. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow and deliberate just beyond the tree line to my right. I didn't turn to look. I couldn't. Every instinct told me to keep moving. The breathing grew louder with every stride I took. At one point, I felt it so close I could hear something dragging against the dirt behind me, like someone walking barefoot, scraping the ground. I veered off the trail instinctively, crashing through dry brush and brambles, heart threatening to burst from my chest. Eventually, I found myself at a small clearing with a bench, one I didn't remember ever seeing before. It looked old, ancient almost, the wood worn smooth like it had been there for decades. I paused just long enough to catch my breath, but then I saw it. Another sign nailed to the bench. Sit, and he'll find you. Run, and he follows. That was enough. I turned and ran back the way I came, cutting through unfamiliar terrain until I stumbled back onto what looked like the original path. I sprinted until the trees began to thin and I could see the sunlight, bouncing off the pavement at the trailhead entrance. When I finally made it back to my car, I nearly collapsed. I sat in the driver's seat, shaking, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, waiting for my breathing to return to normal. Eventually, I drove home in silence. I told myself it was some kind of twisted trail art project, or maybe a weird dream. But when I returned 2 days later in the daylight with a friend, Everything was gone. The mile markers had their original numbers. No carvings. No bench in the clearing. In fact, there was no clearing. Just trees and dirt. The GPS route showed nothing but a normal 5-mile loop. No duplicates, no forks. But the most disturbing part? On my running app's recorded route from that morning, I hit mile 2 different times. The timestamps weren't consistent, and in the middle of the tracking data, for just a split second, the screen glitched, showing my location as a solid, unmoving dot labeled simply, "You stopped." I didn't stop. I know I didn't. Whatever that thing was, whatever trail I crossed into that morning, it wasn't the one I knew. And even now, sometimes when I run alone, I swear I hear breathing behind me. But I never, ever stop to check. Back in late September of 2021, I was staying with my cousin for a few weeks in Missoula, Montana. He lived near the edge of a massive park filled with winding trails that cut through thick pine forests and ran along the base of some steep, rocky hills. It was the perfect escape from the noise of my usual routine. Every morning I went for a jog before sunrise. I liked the stillness, the fog drifting through the trees, and the way the world felt untouched for a brief window of time. There were rarely other joggers that early, just me, the crisp air, and my thoughts. I stuck to one particular trail that looped out near the base of the hills and curved through a dense patch of trees before heading back toward the park entrance. One morning, about a week into my visit, I noticed something strange. As I reached the farthest point in the loop, a quiet, heavily wooded stretch where the trail narrows, I saw someone standing just off the path, partially hidden behind a tree. He wasn't moving. He was facing me, but mostly in shadow, and I only caught a glimpse as I passed. I didn't stop or slow down, just kept running, trying to play it cool, but my mind started spinning. It was too early for hikers or even photographers. Most mornings I didn't see a single person. I kept looking back over my shoulder, but didn't see anyone following me, so I tried to let it go. The next day, I went out again, telling myself it had probably been a trick of the light, or maybe just some early bird like me. But when I reached that same spot, I saw him again. Same tree, same position, just standing there, as if he'd been waiting. Only this time, I got a clearer look. He was tall, at least 6'5", and thin, wearing an old green jacket and what looked like dark jeans. His face was mostly obscured by shadow and the hood he had up, but I could make out pale skin and what looked like a faint smile. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. That night I told my cousin about it, hoping he'd say it was some local eccentric known for hanging around the park. But he just shrugged and said he hadn't heard of anyone like that. Still, he offered to jog with me the next morning for peace of mind. We left just after 6 a.m., both of us alert as we moved through the trail. When we reached the same wooded section, I pointed toward the tree where I'd seen him. No one was there. My cousin teased me gently, said maybe I was overtired or just imagining things. I laughed it off, but something in my gut told me I hadn't been wrong. A few mornings passed without incident. No figure, no signs. I began to think maybe it really had been my mind playing tricks. Then, on a foggy Friday morning, everything changed. I went out alone again. The trail was wet, silent, the air heavier than usual. As I ran deeper into the woods, I heard something. Branches cracking behind me. Not loudly, softly, like someone trying to stay quiet. I stopped, took out my earbuds, and turned around slowly. Nothing, just the trees and the swirling mist. I kept going, but the sound returned, this time closer, more deliberate. Then I saw him, not ahead on the trail, but above me. He was in the trees, not behind them, in them. Crouched on a thick branch like some kind of animal, staring straight down at me. His face was more visible now, thin, expressionless, eyes too wide, too still. He didn't look human anymore. Something about the way he held himself, perched like that with no fear of falling, was deeply unnatural. I froze, trying not to breathe. We locked eyes for what felt like forever. Then he slowly pointed, not at me, but down the trail behind me. I didn't look. I didn't want to know what might have been waiting in the other direction. I turned and ran. Faster than I ever had before, legs burning, lungs aching. I didn't stop until I was out of the woods and back in my cousin's neighborhood, drenched in sweat and shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt amplified. At around 3 a.m., I heard something tap against the bedroom window. I live on the second floor. When I worked up the nerve to look, there was nothing there. But the next morning, in the dirt outside the house, we found a single set of bare footprints. Long, narrow, pressed deep into the ground. They led to the side of the house, then vanished. I cut my visit short and flew home the next day. I haven't been jogging in the woods since. I've searched online for stories like mine, anything about tall figures in trees near Missoula, but there's nothing. Just a lot of silence. Like people are afraid to talk. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd turned around that day when he pointed behind me. But I'm glad I didn't. Because whatever was on that trail, whatever he was pointing toward, it wasn't meant to be seen. And if it had seen me, I don't think I'd be telling this story. In late May of 2022, I was living just outside Asheville, North Carolina, in a quiet neighborhood tucked up against the Blue Ridge Parkway. My house was a rental, small, older, with creaky floors and thin walls, but it sat right next to a stretch of forested greenway that connected to miles of jogging paths. As someone who worked from home, I used those trails almost daily. I liked to run late in the evening when everything felt still, when the sun dipped low behind the mountains and the cicadas filled the silence with their steady rhythm. That night, I laced up around 8:45 p.m. It was a warm, hazy dusk, and the path was nearly empty, just the way I liked it. The route I chose was simple. A long, looping gravel track that passed by a narrow creek, then curved back around to where it started. It usually took me about 40 minutes round trip. That evening felt normal for the first half. Birds rustling in the trees, insects buzzing, my feet moving in steady rhythm with my breathing. But about 20 minutes in, near the farthest point of the loop, I saw her. A woman standing just off the trail, dressed in what looked like a white nightgown. Her back was turned to me. At first I thought maybe she was hurt or disoriented. She was barefoot, not moving, hair long and messy. My instincts told me to stop and ask if she needed help. But something about the way she stood, stiff and too still, made me hesitate. I called out a cautious hello, keeping a good distance. She didn't react, didn't flinch, just stood there with her arms hanging loosely at her sides. I took a few steps closer and called out again, louder this time, but still nothing. That's when I noticed something else. Her feet weren't on the path. She was standing right in the creek, ankle deep in the water, but the hem of her gown was completely dry. I backed away slowly, unnerved, and decided not to engage further. It felt wrong, like stepping into something I didn't understand. I turned back the way I came, picking up my pace, glancing over my shoulder a few times. She hadn't moved, but the silence around me had grown heavy, like the woods were holding their breath. I focused on getting back, feet pounding the gravel a little faster, heart starting to race. Not from exertion, but dread. I had almost convinced myself it was just a strange, isolated encounter, until I rounded the next bend and saw her again, standing ahead of me now on the side of the path. Same nightgown, same messy hair, but this time she was facing me. I stopped cold. Her face was pale, unnaturally pale, and expressionless. Her eyes looked too wide, too glassy, and her mouth hung slightly open like she was mid-breath but never exhaled. She didn't blink, didn't move. I blinked hard and rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was seeing things, but she was still there. I took a step back, then another, and she began to walk. Not fast, not a chase, just walking directly toward me with slow, deliberate steps. Her feet were silent on the gravel. I didn't wait to see how close she'd get. I turned and ran. My lungs were burning by the time I reached the trail entrance near my house. I didn't stop until I was inside, locking the door behind me and shutting every window. I told myself again and again that I'd just seen someone strange, maybe someone on something, maybe even playing a prank. But something about her eyes, her stillness, it didn't leave me. I couldn't shake it. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house set me on edge. Just after 2 a.m., my porch light flicked on. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty porch and the trees beyond. I turned the light off, walked back to bed, and tried to breathe. 30 minutes later, it turned on again. Still nothing. But when I checked my phone, I noticed a strange notification from the fitness app I use to track my runs. A live activity had started. I opened the app, confused, and saw that my phone's GPS was currently tracking movement along the very trail I'd run earlier. The little blue dot was moving slowly, steadily, in a loop. I stared at it for a full minute before realizing something that made my blood run cold. My phone was still in my hand, but the location was showing movement, as if I was out there now, running again. I watched the dot stop. It hovered near the spot where I'd first seen her, then suddenly cut away from the trail and moved directly toward my house. I closed the app immediately and turned off every light in the house. I sat in the dark with my back against the wall, staring at the front door until dawn. When morning came, I walked the trail in daylight, hoping to prove it was all in my head. But there were no footprints in the creek, no signs of a woman, nothing. Just the trail and the quiet breeze. I deleted the app. I never ran that loop again, and I moved out a month later. But sometimes I still check my porch light camera from the new place, just to be sure. And twice it's gone off in the middle of the night. Each time, there's nothing there. But in the reflection of the window, barely visible, there's a faint white blur, like someone standing just out of reach, waiting, watching, always barefoot, always facing me. If these jogging horror stories made you think twice about your next run, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. You never know who or what might be waiting just off the path.